Alright, so today I want to showcase one of the most impressive ball python combinations that I have ever seen since I've been in ball pythons, and that is what we call the Panda Pied. And let me tell you, if you haven't seen the Panda Pied, it is one of the most impressive snakes probably in all of ball pythons. It is a completely black and white snake, really sharp lines dividing the black and the white. And the cool thing about it is there's several ways that you can actually get there, and you can actually get into the projects and start producing Panda Pieds right away, but it's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars. And all the way on the flip side, if you were to kind of get in kind of around the corner, taking the long route to get there, you can actually get in for a few $100 and actually eventually get to the Panda Pied. And what it is, it's actually a super black pastel and a pied. So it's two genes. One is a super and the other is a recessive. And of course, the most expensive way is, it's pretty much in ball pythons, if you pay more up front, you can get there faster. So if you bought two Panda Pieds and you crossed them together, in a few years, when they grow up, you'd actually get a whole clutch of Panda Pieds. But there's quite a few ways you can get there. You can actually buy a pied and a black pastel, or there's quite a few different ways you can actually get into the project. And what I want to do is I want to bring you over to Morph Market. I'm going to boot up my computer and show you some snakes. And I want to show you the different ways that you can get to the Panda Pied. And probably there's, I'd say, as little or as much as you want to invest in the project. If you just invest a few $100, it's going to take you quite a while to actually make a Panda Pied, and sometimes the odds are pretty long in some of your clutches to actually get there. Or if you want to shell out a few $1,000s or thousands and thousands of dollars, you can actually get there in a few years and be producing whole clutches of Panda Pieds. And it's a pretty interesting project because if you produce a Panda Pied, they have more or less amounts of black and white on the snake. So they're almost like snowflakes. You'll never have two Panda Pieds that are exactly the same, which is pretty cool. And it pretty much keeps people from, you know, if you were to say, for example, if you produce like a pastel or maybe like a bamboo like Bobby, pretty much bamboos, well, even bamboos are pretty polymorphic from one to the other. But some projects, you mix them together and you always get the same visual effect in the snake. It's kind of like a clone of the same snake over and over, and it's not really the same with Pieds. Pieds usually have more or less white that makes it really unique from snake to snake, which is pretty cool. So let's jump over to the laptop and I want to show you some of these snakes. Alright, so I am over here on morphmarket.com, and if you haven't been here, let me tell you, there are tens of thousands of ball pythons on here, and you could just look all day long at all the different combinations and all the stuff that you can buy, all the stuff that's sold. So over here, what I did is I actually logged in and I sorted, and I'm viewing all the Panda Pieds that have sold and all the Panda Pieds that are for sale. And essentially, you can actually go in and search for Panda Pied, and it'll break it up to super black pastel and pied. And if you look at some of the ones that are for sale, they're selling for quite a bit. They're actually $6,500 for a female Panda Pied hatched this year. It's pretty crazy. This one's $8,500 from last year, which you probably get a jump on the game if you actually bought one a little bit older. Of course, it's a little bit more expensive. A little bit, a couple thousand, $2,000 more expensive, just a little bit more. And if you look at some of the ones that have sold, some of these are incredible. I can't even believe it. And actually, when I started in the ball python game, these were all selling. You couldn't get one for under $10,000. It was pretty incredible back in the day. And then this one is probably one of the most impressive. I've been looking at this snake for a long time. Take a look at this. This is the potential of the Panda Pied. That thing is screaming. I've never actually seen one so impressive. You know, I pretty much like the 50-50 white and black, and this black is like super stark black. I've seen some other combinations where they kind of have a little bit of black, but it's not as like jet ink black like this one. The Panda Pied is really an impressive combination. And you can see this one actually sold back in 2016 for $10,000, and it's sold as a hatchling, which is pretty incredible. So if you actually get into the project, it still is going to cost you, if you kind of look back here, say for example, if you wanted a male and a female. As a matter of fact, I don't see any males for sale, so you have to pick up a female. The cheapest one you could actually get into is $6,500, the cheapest female, which is pretty incredible. So if you want a different route to actually get in there, so for example, if you actually bought a super black pastel pied male and a female, so you have a male and a female, and you bred them together, of course you would get 100% Panda Pieds. So you breed two Panda Pieds together and you get a whole clutch of Panda Pieds, which is pretty cool with the genetics. But there's other ways of actually going about it. So for example, if you actually took one of those Panda Pieds, you bred it back to a normal, then all the babies would be black pastels, and they would also be 100% het pied, which would be pretty interesting. So you can actually breed those babies together. So for example, if you wanted to get into the project at a lower level, and say for example you wanted to buy the black pastel het pieds for the male and the female, and these pictures are actually messed up because they don't look like this. They would look like black pastels, and you couldn't really tell that they're het pied because they don't have one copy of the pied gene. And this is your odds right here. So you'd have, if you look all the way down on the bottom, you'd have a 1 in 16 chance of actually getting a visual Panda Pied. So it's pretty long odds, but you could get in for a lot cheaper. And if you figure a 1 in 16 chance, if you have really big clutches of 8 eggs, it's going to take you 2 years of clutches to hit the odds of 1 in 16. Hopefully you'll actually hit the odds. Sometimes the odds can work against you, which is pretty incredible. So actually I came over to here to World of Ball Pythons, where they actually list pictures for Panda Pieds, and they have some slightly different pictures over here. They actually have 6 different pictures, and you can kind of see some of the variations. The interesting thing is the one I really liked had a white head. This one actually has a black head, which is really interesting. And I had one more picture over here. This one actually has the white head with just a couple splotches of black. I've actually seen them almost all completely black with one little splotch of white too, which is kind of interesting. So if you come over here and actually start shopping for the black pastel 100% het pied and you're going for the long shot, this is the 1 in 16 chance of producing a visual. But take a look at these prices. I mean, this is pretty affordable. Here's a black pastel spider het pied, and it is $100 for a male. And then you look over here, the cheapest female is $400. So you're talking about $500 for a male and a female. There you go. So you can actually breed those up, breed them back together. 1 in 16 odds that you're going to hit the visual, and you only have $500 into it. But of course, you're going to produce a lot of other stuff along the way. You won't necessarily produce all Panda Pieds. And then once you produce the Panda Pied, you're thinking, all right, $6,500. I might actually sell that and try to keep breeding them again instead of holding it back. That's always the toughest part. When you actually produce what you want, then it's worth a lot of money, and you're so tempted to cash it in instead of hold on to it. Because if you hold on to it, it's another 3 or 4 years before you can breed it, and then usually the price comes down. But in this case, it's come down a little bit, but I'd say the Panda Pieds are really holding their price point. So another thing you can actually do is you can, if you wanted to actually go another way, kind of speed things up a little bit, you could actually get a super black pastel het pied and cross that with a black pastel pied. So one has the super visual and the other has the recessive visual. And you can get into it a little bit cheaper. This is essentially what it would come out to, and you'd end up with 25% visuals, which is another way to get there. So I was actually looking up. So if you decided to go that way, it's a little bit less expensive, but you're still going to pay some money. And the problem is I actually pulled up Super Black Pastel, 100% het pied, and there's only a few on here, and they're all sold. So that's another way you could go. But unfortunately, there is none actually available. And the interesting thing is that actually, if you look at these snakes, it's really informative, because if you look at the Super Black Pastel, it is a completely black snake. And then take a look at this one, Super Black Pastel, possible pinstripe. And I would say that's guaranteed there's definitely pinstripe in there. Look what pinstripe does to the black. So the problem is if you go after the Panda Pied and start adding other genes in the mix, like you have pinstripe, what it's going to do essentially is it's going to wipe out the visual effects of the Panda Pied, and you're going to end up with something that may have the genes, but if it has extra genes, you're not going to get the visual effect of the Panda Pied. If you take a look at this one down here, this is a Super Black Pastel with the fire in it, and the fire really lightens it too. So if you have fire or pinstripe or something else in there, you're not really going to get the effect. So if you're going after the Panda Pied, I would stick with the black pastels and the pieds and eliminate or avoid all other genes if you're actually going for this mix. So here's another one that you could do. You could do the black pastel pieds. So the black pastel pieds is another way you could go, and you can see, the males are selling for like $500 for a black pastel pied, and the females are selling for about $750. So you're looking at like $1,250 for a couple of them. Or if you actually bred this one back to the other one, then you're looking at depends on the males and the females. The bad thing is if you go back to this one, there's actually none available, so you really can't cross these two. So we're going back to the genetic wizard to see if we can find something where we can advance a little bit further ahead, but we don't want to spend $12,000, $13,000 for a male and a female Panda Pied. And here is another way you could do it, is you can actually breed the black pastel pied with a black pastel pied. So you actually have two that have the black pastels and the pieds. So these pictures are actually correct. You breed two of these together, and you can see with just one copy of the black pastel, it looks more like a dark pied, but it doesn't really have the black intent. So you need the Super Black Pastel to actually get the visual effect of the Panda Pied. But your odds are a lot better. In this case, you actually get 25% Panda Pieds, which is pretty cool. So, and if we look back at some of the other ones, so we actually had these two together. You can get into the project for $1,250, and you actually have 25% of producing the Panda Pieds. Let me tell you, this is probably the route that I would go to actually shoot for the Panda Pied. So if we go over to here, and here's another way we could do it. We could do the Super Black Pastel Pied and the Black Pastel Pied. So for example, if you wanted to get in just a little bit higher, spend a little bit more money, you could actually get one visual Panda Pied. Say, all right, you could afford one for $6,500, but you can't afford two because it's going to cost you $13,000. So what you could do is you could get one Panda Pied and then get another Black Pastel Pied for, depends on if it's a male or female. So now you're talking another maybe $500. And look at your odds here, 50% Panda Pieds out of this deal. So you're investing about $7,000 instead of $1,200. You get twice as many Panda Pieds out of the deal. So you can see there's quite a few ways you can actually do it, depending on what your budget is and how long you actually want to take to actually breed and produce a lot of Panda Pieds. So if we start all the way at the bottom, say, all right, I don't have, $7,000. I don't have $1,250. I just have a couple $100 and I want to get into this project. All right, you can actually do it on the very low end. So take a look at this. You can actually get a 2019 male black pastel, and these black pastel, just a straight black pastel, $75. There you go. You can get into the project at less than $100. And you come over here and you can actually, I actually sorted by pieds. So you can actually get a visual pied and a black pastel and start that way, which would be kind of the slow way, but it would be the least expensive way to do it. So for example, I was kind of looking at probably the cheapest way to get into this project on the least amount of money and have some really decent snakes. I would probably go and get some males that are like 50% white. These are really nice for about $275. So you're spending about, with shipping, maybe $300, $325. And then you come over here to the black pastels and you're spending maybe another $100, $150. So you're looking at maybe $500 to get the black pastel and the pied mixed together. And that would probably be the cheapest way you can actually do it. And it depends. So if you wanted to do like a female pied, you could do that too. So for example, I went over here and looked at the cheapest, pretty decent female pieds. And the female pieds, they're probably about $300 for a nice, 50-50 female pied, which is pretty cool. Here's another way that you can actually speed things up. I actually came over to here, and if you want to produce really fast, super fast, and you want to produce stuff right away, you can actually, I went over here and I sorted by black pastel, female, and the oldest birth over here. And I found this one right here, a black pastel female from 2012 for $300. There you go. And now we're talking. This is super fast. Now you have a black pastel female, 2,727 grams. Definitely big enough to breed the first year. So essentially what I would do is, if this was my project and I wanted to get there really fast, what I would do is I would actually buy this black pastel female and I would breed a visual pied male back to it. So if you go over here to this tab was the males at the least expensive. So probably what I do is I would get one of these males. You could get a low white male right here. Here's a really low white male, $200 here. And then that black pastel female is another $300. So that's $500. And within probably the first year or two, you could get a really big clutch of eggs. And those would actually be, they'd actually be 50%. 50% would be black pastels, and they would all be 100% het pied. So essentially what you'd have to do is you have to breed the babies back together, and then it's 1 in 16 chance to actually get the visuals. But you'd actually get a bunch of babies really quick. Or what you could do is you could sell all the babies and then save up and buy the visual Panda Pied. You could actually do it that way. So if you actually bred these together, so if I actually took a pied and you bred it to the black pastel, this is what you get. You get half het pied and half black pastel het pieds. Of course, you need the black pastel het pieds to actually breed together to actually get the offspring to. So you have to breed the offspring. You'd have to breed the black pastel het pied back together to actually get the 1 in 16 chance to get the visual Panda Pied. Alright, so now you know there's quite a few ways to actually make the Panda Pied. If you have about $13,000, you could jump right in, start making whole clutches of Panda Pieds. But I'd say in most cases, most people don't really want to make that kind of investment. They'll invest a little bit less, kind of maybe as much as they can afford, even at the low end for just a few $100. But let me tell you, if you have just $400 or $500 and you invest in the project, it could take you a long time, possibly the rest of your life, to actually produce a visual Panda Pied. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.